All right, welcome back. Shh. Welcome. He's gone. Okay, there was someone here that wasn't. Anyway, I've got a tripod. This angle might be better. I'm getting more sophisticated. Hopefully this works well. No, I won't leave it there, I promise. Oh, is that bothering you where it is? Yeah? I'll move it over a little bit. I'm sorry. It was there before you were. All right, all right. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Please sign in for the attendance. I want to continue our discussion of class from Tuesday. It seemed like a very long time ago. This topic, and I will make no attempt to hide it, this topic is the hardest of the semester, right? The topic of present and future interest is the hardest part. It's sort of in the middle, kind of easy at the beginning, talking about foxes, right? All that stuff is fun. Then you get this stuff, and at the end it gets a little bit easier. But this is the hardest part of the semester. So I want to start this poll question. Oh, any questions before I get started in general? Any general questions? No? Okay. So I want to start with a poll question that I think will get you thinking about these topics. And when I ask these questions, you'll notice they take a specific format. Okay? And the format is, here's what happens. Someone dies. Who owns Blackacre? They will almost always follow the same format. Here are certain transactions. Something happens. Who owns the land, right? So these are typical of how you'll see it on my exam or anywhere else in the bar or anything else in some time. So here's your question, right? I'll read it for you. The first transaction number 1. Blackacre from O to A for life, then to B and his heirs. And note the comma after life. Make sure you put that very clearly in your notes. So Blackacre from O to A for life, comma, then to B and his heirs. The second transaction. A sells Blackacre to C. Okay, those are your two transactions. Then I tell you that A dies. Who owns Blackacre? All right, so take another 30 seconds, so please put an answer. Okay. I get my good side. I don't have a good side. They're all bad. All right. All right. I think just about 60 people. All right, you didn't put your answer in. Please put it in now. That's okay. It's not graded. All right. Who am I up to? Okay, Farron. So Farron, let's take this one step at a time, right? The first transaction, Blackacre from O to A for life, then to B and his heirs. Before this first transaction, what was O's interest in Blackacre? Fee simple, that's right. How do you know that? Not always, but you can presume, right? Unless the facts are otherwise, right? Unless the facts are otherwise, you presume in this case that O had a fee simple. He had a fee simple. That's the important point, right? So Mackenzie, initially O had a fee simple. What happens next? Okay, so what does it mean, just in plain English, for O to give a life estate to A? Just in plain English, what does that mean? Okay. And how long does that present interest last for?
For A's life.
Okay. So he started with fee simple. He had the full bundle of sticks. He chopped it up. He gave a life estate to A. And what else did he do, Allison?
He gave B a remainder in fee simple.
He gave B a remainder in fee simple. What's a remainder, Allison?
The future.
Right. Think of the remainder as whatever is left over, right? He had a fee simple. He had the full bundle of sticks. He chopped it up. He gave a life estate to A, and yet stuff left over. That's the remainder. Remember, like in math, when you do division, like the, long division with remainders? It's similar, right? It's whatever's left over. So the remainder is a future interest for B. And I think Allison said it's a remainder in fee simple. Is that what you said? She's right. How do you know it's a remainder in fee simple? Exactly right. It says then to B and his heirs. When you see that language and his heirs, you need sirens flashing in your head. The language and his heirs doesn't actually mean the heirs of B. What it means is fee simple, right? That B now has a future interest in fee simple. Okay? All right, so after this first transaction, A has a life estate, present interest. B has a future interest in fee simple. Everyone with me? All right, Tim, I think you're next. Tim, so we have this second transaction, right? A sells Blackacre to C. Again, what is A's interest in Blackacre?
For his life.
It's a life estate, right? What exactly is A conveying to C here? Is A giving C a fee simple?
No, he's giving him his life estate.
That's right. A can only convey what he has. A has a life estate. Therefore, A can give C a life estate. All right, I called everyone? We good? Jasmine, back in the front. Okay, so when A gives C a life estate, how long does that interest last for?
Or how long for A's life?
Is it C's life or A's life?
Oh, C's life, actually.
I tricked you.
Oh, okay, so A's life.
Why is it A's life, though?
Because whenever O transferred
Yes.
to A, it was for A's life.
It's measured by the original conveyance, right? It's measured by the original conveyance. C will have it so long as A is alive. And Jasmine, what happens once A dies?
Once A dies,
Which is the question we have here.
when A dies, it goes back to B.
I'm sorry, say it again. I was coughed. I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
Whenever A dies, it goes back to B because of reversion. Or like,
Don't say reversion.
oh no, okay.
You said goes back the first time,
Yes.
right? That's correct. Okay. She's right. When A dies, right, B's remainder kicks in, right? B had a remainder. You call B a remainderman, right? It's like a superhero, right? He's just waiting around for A to die. It sounds awful, but it's true. B's just sitting there saying, do you have a cold? Right? You're looking under the weather, right? You're looking really thin, right? Awful, I know, but B's waiting for A to die. Some of you are laughing, at least. And once A dies, Blackacre goes to B. Oh, very good. Almost 90% B. Very good. And the answer here is B. Now, I corrected Jasmine because she said the word reversion or reverts. Don't use that word because there's something else that's called reversion. I think Nancy asked me about this last week. I'll get there a little bit later. But just for your own sanity, try not to say reverts or reversion in this context, okay? I'll tell you why later. Okay, so the answer here is B. I think almost all of you got that. That's very good. Makes me a little reassured. A is only able to sell whatever he has. A is a life estate. He can sell his life estate. Now, Catherine, why would someone purchase a life estate? Why is that a risky purchase?
Because you can only own it for however long the person
Yeah.
has the estate for.
Yeah, I mean, if you buy a life estate and the guy gets hit by a bus the next day, you get nothing for it. So usually people don't buy life estates. In fact, in the cases we have today, these people are basically trapped in their property because they couldn't sell it because no one will buy their life estate. No one will give you a mortgage on a life estate because once you die, the debt goes away, right? Life estates are very, very difficult to deal with, which is why if you love someone, you don't give them a life estate. We'll see that in the cases today. If you love them, you give them the full bundle of sticks. You don't give them a life estate. Okay. Everyone with me? Yes, Elias.
You said that the life estate is measured by the life of the conveyor.
The person, the grantee, the person who receives it. So A. Yeah. I think I said by the conveyance, the original conveyance. I think that's what I said. All right. Let's review our terminology, right? So far, we've studied present interests and we've studied future interests. And we have two kinds of each. We have the fee simple, which is a full bundle of sticks, and we have the life estate, which is an estate measured by a person's natural life. Okay, those are the two present interests we've studied so far. We've studied also two types of future interests. The first one is called the remainder. I think this was either Mackenzie or Allison mentioned this a minute ago. The remainder right? The remainder is the future interest after a life estate. Okay? The remainder is a future interest after a life estate. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a wrinkle. See over here how it goes to B, like a third party? That's what a remainder is, right? A remainder is a future interest after a life estate to a third party. I know students hate when I do this. It was so simple. Why are you doing this, Josh? Why are you making this complicated? A remainder is a future interest that comes after a life estate that goes to a third party. It's usually B. Everyone get that much, right? When it goes to B, it's called a remainder. Right? Everyone get that? What if I change it? What if I give you an example like this? From O to A for life, period.
That's reversion.
Oh, she didn't have to raise her hand, but she got it. Monique. From O to A, you were so excited that you nailed it. You got it right. Let me do my shtick, okay? From O to A for life, that's it, period. Sentence ends there. What is A's present interest there?
Life estate.
Okay. You always have to ask yourself, what is the present interest? And what is the future interest? There's always both. You always have to assess both of them. Monique, who has a future interest in this case? Oh, and what do you call that? No. No. Why is it not a remainder? How did we define remainder a minute ago? She's helped you. Why is it not a remainder, Monique? How do we define remainder? Who has the future interest here? Is O a third party? So what do we call this? What do we call O's interest here?
Present?
No? Well, does O have it at present moment?
No.
When does O get it?
After A dies.
Okay, what do we call it when there's a future interest that goes back to the grantor? What's that?
Reversion?
That's it. This was called a reversion. Right? This is Jasmine gave me this one a minute ago, and you're I'm not upset. These are hard terms to keep in mind because remainder, reversion, they sound the same, but you need to keep these straight in your head. The reversion is a future interest after a life estate to the grantor. Right? And here O is the grantor, the original grantor. Right? When the future interest after a life estate goes back to O, we have what's called reversion. Don't say reverts, please don't say reverts, but it's called a reversion. Okay? So we so far have two types of present estates, fee simple and life estate, and two types of future interest, remainder and reversion. Okay? Don't get these confused. You will get these confused, but try hard not to. What makes this topic so complicated is you have to look before and after the comma, right? You can't just say, oh, we have a life estate. That means it gets a remainder after it. That's true most of the time, but not always. You might have a life estate, but then you look after the comma, you say, it goes to B. That means it's remainder. Or you have a life estate followed by a period. Uh-oh, where's it going to go? It goes back to O, right? Someone's going to ask me, is there an easy way to remember this? No, there's not. You simply have to read before and after the comma. There's no like mechanical rule. You have to understand what's going on. Is the future interest going to a third party after a life estate? Remainder. Is the future interest going to the grantor after a life estate? Reversion. You have to remember it. Chance. Sorry. There's no name tag there, so I was winging it. Yeah, so it makes it even harder.
When you have a descendant of
Sorry, say that again?
a descendant of the grantor,
Okay.
is that descendant still considered
Yes.
for the grantor, or is he a third party?
No, he stepped into the shoes of O.
Okay.
Right, so let's say O dies and O is a son. O's son is still in the shoes of the grantor.
So that in that situation, it would be the reversion.
Yes.
The grantor.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Will you go over a remainder and be simple?
Okay. So let's go back to our example over here. Then to B and his heirs, right? We know that the future interest goes to a third party, so it's a remainder. Why is it a remainder in fee simple?
Because they answer.
Right. Okay. So that's remainder as heirs. But the example I have here, right? Chelsea. From O to A for life, right? What is O's future interest?
Wait, I'm sorry.
What is O's future interest here? No. How do we describe O's future interest? It's on the board. Okay. O is reversion. Reversion in blank. After A dies, what is O's interest going to be? Okay, so currently, let's walk this through, right, Chelsea? Currently, O is a future interest, right? And what's that future interest called? No. Be confident. Say it. You said it before.
I'm confused. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What is O's future interest right here called? Is it louder?
Reversion.
Reversion, okay. Reversion, good. What happens when A dies?
Goes back to O.
Okay. And what do we call O's interest after A dies? What's his present interest at that point? What are the two types of present interest we've learned so far?
Fee simple.
Uh-huh. It's on the board. It's right behind me. Okay. After A dies, what is O's present interest called? Yeah. Okay. So this is important. After A dies, O is a fee simple. What we would say here is that O has a reversion in bingo. Exactly right. O is reversion in fee simple. Right? Now, it doesn't say and his heirs here, does it? You need to know that. This was, I think, Mackenzie's question a couple minutes ago, right? O initially had a fee simple. He carved out a life estate, knowing that once A dies, he gets his fee simple back, right? You always have to have the full bundle of 6 accounted for. A has a life estate, O has reversion in fee simple, right? I'll write it out right here. A has a life estate, O has reversion in, I can't type, in fee simple. O has reversion in fee simple. Okay? You have to always account where's Blackacre today and what's going to happen to it once A dies. You need to explain everything. Yes, Jasmine.
Okay, so Just a quick question about the reversion. So basically, like the way I'm thinking about it is like if something is passed through a person and they're gonna get it back, it would be reversion. But remainder is something that they haven't had and they're going to get.
Don't try to do this.
Okay.
I told you not to. These are the rules I gave you. You use these rules. I know exactly. Look, what you're doing is very smart, right? You're trying to make sense of what I told you. You're going to confuse yourself so much more. You look after the comma, right? If there's a comma and it goes to a third party, it's going to be a remainder. If there's a period and it goes back to the grantor, you got reversion. I know what you're trying to do, and what you're doing is very intelligent, and I respect what you're doing, but you're going to make yourself nuts because I'm going to give you more stuff later, and you're going to say, do they have it now? Do they have it then? You just look at the comma. If there's something after to a third party, you got remainder. If you got a period, goes back, you have reversion. Okay, Doug, yes?
So whenever we're, I guess, defining what is occurring, you always want us to do their present interest and their future interest.
Say it one more time, please.
Oh, sorry.
That's
So
okay.
Whenever we're defining it, you always want us to do, I said it backwards, their future interest in their present interest.
Right. Whenever I ask you a question, you should be able to put in your head, what are the present interests here? And what are the future interests here? I may not ask you both of them. Maybe I'll ask you one or the other. But at least in your head, you need to account for both of them. Okay? I know this is not natural. Yeah, is that a hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your opening question,
Just go up. Yeah, let me go back up to it so everyone can see it. Okay.
so after A sells to C, and C dies, does A get a reversion on the life estate? Or does it
Hold on. So you're modifying my question, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just everyone understands modifying the question. So you're saying C dies before A.
Before A, does A get the reversion of that?
No, no. This is not important, but if C dies, C's heirs would get the life estate. Right? Once A gives away his life estate, he never gets it back. So C's heirs would hold it until A's death. Okay? You can never give more than what you have. A had a life estate measured by A's life. That's all he can convey. He can't convey anything else. So as soon as A dies, in this case, B gets it. If he's simple.
But he can give it away.
Oh, just raise your hand? Yeah, thank you.
Like he can give it away as a life estate.
Who's he?
A.
A can sell his life estate. That's correct. That's all he can sell.
Wait. All right.
A had a life estate?
A had a life estate, then he, I guess, sells the life.
He sells his life estate
Or gives the
to
life
C.
estate.
You can do it either way. You can give it or sell it either way.
But it would be a life estate to no his own. Okay, I'm saying life estate to C. He can sell it as a life estate to C, like his interest.
Let's try this again. A has a life estate measured by his own life. That's all he can have. That's all he can sell. He gives C a life estate measured by A's life. And just a tip, don't say he, right? Because who's he? Is it A or C? Right? So just say A can sell a life estate measured by A's life to C. Done. Yeah. Yeah.
Whenever there's a third party and to their heirs, O is giving up fee simple, but he's giving it up splitting. So he's giving up his life estate and his remainder.
Right. In this question, does O have any interest? O has nothing. After this first transaction, O has no present interest, and O has no future interest. O is out of the picture. He's gone. Right? He's gone. He gave away his entire bundle of sticks. He gave away. He's got nothing left. Marcos, was your hand up?
No.
Yeah, Heather.
Okay, so I know for A it's measured, like A can only sell for however long his life is.
That's right.
And then is there a way for him to make like a provision in there and be like, so I'm selling, however long my life is to C, and then in the event that I outlive C, it comes back to me?
Yes,
Is there a way
yes,
to
you
do
can
that?
do that.
Okay.
You can do that. Right. You can do that, right? You could say A sells Blackacre to C, but if C dies first, the land goes to A. Now, you said but if, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's next week. Those are called conditional statements, right? Here's what usually happens, but if something else happens, do X, right? This is really complicated. That's next week, but you can absolutely do that, which is why I'm fighting the question. I'm resisting it as long as I can. I don't want you to get ahead of yourself because you're all smart students, but if you jump too far ahead, you'll have difficulties. Elias?
If there was a period instead of a comma, does the first section imply, or like?
Well, that wouldn't be a sentence. You wouldn't have a period there. You have to have a comma. And let me put this to you bluntly. I am not going to screw you with punctuation, right? I'm not going to do that. If I want there to be a remainder, I'm going to put a comma in there, right? I'm not going to try and trick you like that because it's hard. I can trick you into other stuff. It's a lot harder. But I am pretty good with my punctuation. That's why I hand somewhere in the back. And we're still on the poll question, my friends. Half an hour in. That's fine. It's exactly as bad I thought how long it would take. Everyone with me? All right. Let me briefly walk through the discussion of inheritance about the kin stuff. This is not terribly important. It's actually pretty straightforward. The book, I think, complicates it more than it has to be. But let me make this point simple. No one is the heir of a living person. No one is the heir of a living person. You say, oh, I'm an heir of my grandmother. Grandma's alive? No, you're not. Right? You know, Paris Hilton, the heiress, right? No. If grandpa's still alive, he has no heirs. All of you are alive, God willing, right? You're all here alive, I think. I hope. You don't have any heirs. Heirs are only determined at your death. Heirs only determined at your death. And heirs do not need to be biological relations. You can designate in your will friends to be your heirs. People designate, my God, their pets to be heirs, right? Not exactly, but you know what I'm saying. You can designate anyone you want to be an heir. They don't have to be blood related. Okay. There's a concept today called kin, K-I-N. This is a term that today doesn't have any real meaning. Today, kin and heir are synonymous. But back in the day, if you saw the word kin, it meant specifically someone who will inherit your property. Not terribly important, but you have to just know this one. Okay? Issue, right? The word I-S-S-U-E. Issue refers to descendants, usually children. You might see this word here and there, but you know, not again terribly important. Issue refers to children or descendants. So like your brother or your sister is not an issue. Your son or daughter is an issue. Oh, maybe. The phrase ancestors. Ancestors means you're going up the chain. So let's say a person dies and they have no brothers or sisters, kids, but they have parents. Ancestors. Okay. Another term, collaterals. Sounds so awful, right? Collaterals. These are people who are related by blood, but are not descendants. What does that mean? Brothers, sisters, nephews, aunts, uncles, cousins. Okay? All right. Spouses are complicated, right? Because spouses are not related by blood. I mean, maybe they might be, but look, I mean, through history, they often were related by blood. That's complicated when you marry someone who's both your kin and your. Look, these were complicated times, but I'll just assume that generally your spouse is not your kin. I mean, I guess it could be, but just I've never asked that in an exam. Oh man, that'd be mean. So I don't think I'm going to, but just and we'll presume spouses are not related by blood. Generally, if a person dies without a will and they have a spouse but no children, right? Again, let's just say a husband and a wife are married, the husband dies without a will. Generally, the wife will get everything. There are complexities to this, which we'll study later this semester, but generally the wife gets everything. If there are kids, it gets more complicated. If there's one child remaining, the wife gets half and the kid gets half. If there are 2 children remaining, it gets even more complicated, where the wife usually takes a third, and then you split up the remaining 2/3 with the other kids. And the math here gets messy. I don't want to bother you with the math right now. You'll take wills in another semester or 2, but it gets very messy when there's no will and you have multiple kids, because then the kids have to slice it up. And we'll do an example like this in a few minutes. Okay. Yes, Ashley.
So quick, I know you said that kin and heir are synonymous, but
Yeah.
what did you say it used to mean?
Kin referred to the people in your line who would be inheriting your property. It was a more specific term. It's like you could have heirs who are not your kin, right? Kin was a special category of people who would stand to your property. But for today, the words don't really have a separate meaning. They're the same. Yeah.
So like for an exam question, we don't need to know the whole.
I don't think I've ever used the word kin in an exam ever. I just don't really use it. It's not a word that's used anymore. Chance.
When you were talking about spouse, was that like a second spouse and then a spouse from the first spouse, or is that like?
You're asking something far more complicated, but generally you can't have 2 spouses at once, right?
Really obvious.
So once you divorce a person, they're no longer your spouse and they don't count. But the children from previous marriages do count, because you can't getting divorced to the mom doesn't mean you're absolving any ties to the kid.
The only reason I ask is now, when I thought if someone died, it just all went to their spouse.
No.
Okay.
No, and preview, we'll do family law later. In Texas, which is a community property state, it's even more complicated, but we'll get there later. So I'm just giving you very rough outlines. Go to page 260 if you can, please. Kinsey, I think you're next. You want to read the first question, paragraph 1?
So, owner of Blackacre has 2 children, A daughter and B son.
Good.
Subsequently, B dies testate, dividing all of his property to W his wife. B is survived by 3 children, B1 daughter.
Okay, by the way, what does testate mean?
With a will.
With a will, right? Intestate means without a will. Testate means with a will. So we had a will. All right, go on, Kinza, please keep reading.
3 children, B1 daughter, B2 son, and B3 daughter. A1 son is born to A, then O dies intestate. Who owns Blackacre in England in 1800 under American law?
Okay, I don't care about the 1800 in England. We'll talk about American law for this question, right? So let's walk through this one step at a time. O, owner Blackacre, again, O at fee simple. We'll just presume that here. O has 2 children, a son and a daughter, right? B dies with a will. Okay? And he gives all of his property to his wife. Okay? So Kinza, at the moment B dies, does B have any interest in Blackacre? When B dies, does B have any interest in Blackacre?
Yes.
What's that interest?
He has.
Who owns Blackacre?
O does.
Does B have any interest in Blackacre?
Not yet.
Not yet. We don't know. There's no requirement for O to leave anything to his son. He could be a worthless ingrate, right? B has no interest. So when B dies and gives everything to his wife, does his wife get any part of Blackacre at that point? That's correct. Right? When B dies, his wife gets everything, but there's no Blackacre. B has no interest in Blackacre. Okay. So now we see that B has 3 kids, daughter, son, and daughter. Right? B1, 2, and 3. And we also see that A has a son. A1. Okay? Chris, O dies intestate. O dies without a will. Who are the heirs of O? Who are the heirs of O? Who are the heirs of O?
A is still alive currently, right?
Yep.
So A,
Who else?
and then A1.
Is A1 an heir? Who are the heirs of A? I'm sorry, who are the heirs of O?
Not quite sure beyond A.
Well, is B an heir? Is B an heir of O?
He was.
He was. What happened to him?
Died.
So then what happens to B's interest? Who gets it?
His wife.
No, and that's the wrong answer. I'm glad you said it. The wife gets nothing, right? Heirs are through blood. The wife is through marriage. So Chris, B doesn't get it. I'm sorry, B's wife doesn't get it. Who gets it? Who gets B's interest? Who gets B's interest here? Not his wife.
No one?
Wrong. Who do you think gets it? When B dies, who do you think gets it?
A1?
No. Mike, who gets B's interest?
B1, B2, and B3.
Exactly, B's kids. B's kids step into the shoes of B. Right? B's kids step into the shoes of B. So who are the heirs of O? A, he's still alive. A1 has to keep waiting till daddy dies, right? But A's an heir of O. And then B1, 2, and 3 are heirs of O. The wife gets zip. 1 second, Tim. So the heirs are A, and then B1, 2, and 3. Tim?
Does the order they died matter about W's getting it?
W gets nothing.
So if O died and then
Oh, I see. So if B survived his father, then the wife would get everything. Or actually, well, there were kids, so she split with her kids, right? But because B died first, the wife gets zip. What, did you raise your hand? Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. I was like, because he never had interest in like age.
He didn't have it till the father died. Heather?
So wait, even then, if B had outlived him when he got the interest, and even if he said that he's going to his wife,
Then she would, but B would have to outlive the father.
okay, but then he wouldn't have, like, it wouldn't be split between the wife and the children, or would it still be split?
Well, if B has a will, he can decide everything goes to his wife, and he can do that. Okay, but here there's no will. And so by operation of law, it gets split. Now, there's math involved, which I know students hate, right? There's math involved. I'm going to do this for you. You're not going to like it, okay? But I'm going to do it for you, right? So we have A is the first heir, B1, B2, and B3. Okay? A gets half of the interest in Blackacre, and the kids share half interest, which means they each get 1/6. And you can do this differently as 2/6. If you don't understand this, I'm not going to cry, but let me try to explain it to you. I'm sorry, 3/6, thank you. See, I screwed up my own head. 3/6, right? Reduces, right? Thank you. There's a half share to A and a half share to B. B's dead. So then B's share goes with 3 kids. You need to chop up a half 3 ways, which is 1/6, 1/6, and 1/6. Now, someone's going to ask me, Josh, does that mean that A owns the first floor and B1 owns the first bedroom and B2 owns the second bedroom? And then, no. They all own the house. They can go anywhere they wish. If the house is sold, and let's say it's a $100,000 purchase price, A gets $50,000, and the kids each get 1/6 of that. I'm not doing the math right now, right? But that doesn't mean that one owns first floor, and then the second floor. How do you think it works to have 4 people all owning Blackacre? It's messy. It's very messy, right? This is why in the cases we'll study today, courts don't like partial inheritances. They like for one person to get everything because it's neat and clean. When you have 4 people all claiming ownership of the Blackacre, it's a disaster. And that's why dying without a will is very selfish, right? You're actually leaving your family in a much worse position than they were before. to deal with these sorts of conflicts. Okay. Oh, yes, Chance.
So, if B had stayed alive after his father's death, his wife would be the heir and would receive part of that half.
Yes.
If he's still alive.
At that point, the wife would have had to share the house with A. The wife would have had half, and A would have had half.
But because B died.
He died first. You know, this is like the disco song, staying alive, right? If you stay alive longer, you get more stuff. If you die early, you get screwed. It's a morbid class because people who die don't get stuff. It's actually quite gruesome. Yeah, yes.
So Brown, discussion, would it be the wife and B1, B2, and B3 all have that half, or, right? Or would it just
Well, if Chance's question's correct and B outlives, the kids get nothing. The wife would get half, right? He asked if B outlived O. In that case, the will was in effect. The wife would get B's interest. The kids would get nothing.
even though the kids are heirs?
You can specify in your will to cut your kids out of your will. Right? This is what we saw in the case today. If you're writing a will, you can cut your kids out. You can do a bunch of ingrades. I want everything for my wife. And you can do that. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, you can't cut your spouse out of your will. There are rules against that. And we'll cover that later this semester. You can imagine this happens a lot. There are rules that if you try to cut your spouse out of your will, she or he can get something instead. They can fight it. But you can cut your kids out of your will. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. You're under no obligation to leave a penny to your kids. All of you people think, oh, Daddy, I love you. No, you don't, right? Dad, right? But you can cut your kids out. You can't cut your spouse out of your will. That is trickier. But you can cut your kids out of your will. Everyone with me? All right, I want to briefly mention fee tails and never again, okay? I will never test you on this, so you can just stop writing, okay? Fee tails were ways to keep land in a family, right? You would keep it in a certain bloodline. You would make it impossible for your descendants to sell it outside the bloodline, right? The line would last long as living relatives exist, and they would exist forever. Okay? It's been abolished in virtually every state. I think it exists in a couple states, and you can get out of it pretty quickly. That's all I want to say about fee tails. We have much more important things to talk about. Okay? Any questions on fee tails? You'll never see this ever again in your life. If you see a fee tail, you're in a very weird place that these exist. Is that a hand? Okay, so you won't see this, but I told you it is. I feel like I've done my job. Okay. Okay, let's do the cases then. Who am I up to? Juitza. You want to give me the facts, please, in the first case, White versus Brown, Tennessee, 1977.
Sure. So this was the case of Jessie Lee, who passed away and left a photographic will stating that she wished to leave her home for Evelyn White, who was her sister-in-law, to live in and not to be sold, and left her all her personal property to her niece, Sandra White Perry. And it was brought by Sandra against the Browns, who were Jessie Lee's nieces and nephews.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. First off, let me set some terminology. Chancellor. What's a chancellor? A chancellor is a special type of judge who sits in what's called a court of equity. You probably studied in Civ Pro the difference between law and equity, right? Sorry. In England, you actually have two types of courts. Your courts of law and your courts of equity, right? The courts of law did common law stuff. The courts of equity did fairness type stuff. When you have a chancellor, that's what you call a judge sitting in equity. Okay, you might see that. Some states still have chancellors, like Delaware, for example. They have courts of chancery. You may have heard that phrase. Okay. The second phrase is what's called a holographic will. If anyone saw Avengers Endgame, that's not what a holographic will is. I was all excited when I saw, yeah, holographic will. No, I want to ruin it. But a holographic, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But a holographic will is a will written by hand, right? When you write a will by hand, it sounds really cool, but it's pretty boring, right? Generally, people should not write wills by hand. Look at these two cases to see what screws up when you do that, right? Generally, you don't write a will by hand. The third term is testatrix. Testatrix. You've probably heard the word testator, which means a person who signs a will. That's a man. A testator is a male person who signs a will. A testatrix is a female who signs a will. The ix suffix signifies female. I'll give you an example if you never thought of. Dominator and dominatrix, right? That's there you go. You'll never forget this, right? You never thought of it, did you? You're welcome. Things you learn in property, right? I remember when I was in law school, and I saw the word what? It's like a dominatrix? What the hell is that? And I looked it up. I was like, okay, so I always please give you the benefit of the doubt, and I tell you those words. Okay. Please don't worry about dominatrix.
No.
Don't get me in trouble.
No, just with those two terms. Here in today's age, I've looked at the law and seen just testator.
Yeah, it's neutral. Now it's neutral. There used to be the reason why is that at certain points in history, women weren't capable of signing contracts, so it actually made a difference if it was a man or a woman. Today, the distinctions are relevant. But this is a fairly, not old, but it's an old-timey case that of an instrument written many years earlier. So you will probably never see testatrix. Look, the word litigatrix and litigator, I'm pretty sure, oh God. So in Black's Law Dictionary, just check me on this one. I know Brian Garner had an issue about this, about whether the word litigatrix was considered sexist, right? Because it is often used to refer to a female who's a very powerful litigator. But whether it's so, I don't know if Brian took litigatrix out of the dictionary in Black's Law. I can't remember. But there was a dispute about this. Yes, Cassidy. Yeah. It's a word. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's used, but it's a historical phrase. Anyway, so you're welcome. You also executor and executrix. You'll see this in old documents, but it's just not going to be common. Okay. Anyway, let's go back to the facts. So we have here a few parties. We have Jessie Lead. I don't know if it's Lied or Lead. I say Lead. I don't know. She was a widow with no kids, and she was survived by two sisters. Then you had Evelyn White, and her husband lived with Jessie for 25 years. And this house was tiny, right? It was like a couple-room cottage, and you never even went to one of the rooms either. Then you also had Sandra White, who was a daughter who lived with them. Okay. Jessie rented this house for decades, and she paid $3 a week. That's a good rate. And she eventually made some expansions to the house. Okay, that's what happens. Two of the sisters gave their interest to Evelyn, right? It's what's called quitclaimed. What's a quitclaim? It's a way of quickly conveying your interest. It's not done with any formalities. It's a very quick way of doing it. You just write it down, it's done. We know that Sandra married in 1969, but the husband died and Evelyn's husband died in 71. Evelyn lived with Jessica until 73. And in 73, Jessie Lead died and left a holographic will. Okay, let me put the text on the board. Everyone can see this, okay? Everyone can see this, okay? It says. So it says, actually, you want to read for me, Nancy, please? I, Jessie Lead.
I, Jessie Lead, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament. I appoint my niece, Sandra White,
Sorry.
executrix of my
Yeah, see, executrix, so you see it.
I wish Evelyn White had a home to live in and not to be sold. I also leave my personal property to Sandra White Perry. My house is not to be sold. Jessie Lead, underscoring by testament.
Underscoring means underlined, right? So the important point here are these sentences. I wish Evelyn White to have my home to live in and not to be sold. Underlining not, underlying sold. And then one sentence later, my house is not to be sold. All right, so Nancy, pretend you're not in law school, right? Flashback to last year, so happy, right? You weren't suffering. No, I'm just kidding. But just pretend you're not a lawyer anymore, you're not a law school student, and you're looking at this document by this elderly woman, and you're reading it. In plain English, what was she trying to convey here? What was she trying to accomplish, just in plain English?
I think she just wanted to make sure that Evelyn didn't get kicked out when she passed.
So you think this means that Evelyn can live there as long as she wants?
Yeah, I mean, can you, I'm thinking about the opinions and I.
Forget the opinion, just reading this as a human being, as a rational person, you're literate. What do you think this means? What was Jessica Leeds' intent here?
That Evelyn receives the home, but she doesn't want her to sell it.
Doesn't want who to sell? Evelyn.
Evelyn.
Okay. So Evelyn can live there but can't sell
And
it.
it honestly seems like nobody can sell it.
Oh.
What it sounds like to me. It just can't ever be
The
sold,
house
which is like
can never be sold.
Yeah.
So what the hell does that mean?
I think it means she didn't know how to construct her will.
Like a fee tale? Like it can never be sold?
Yeah.
Nicholas, what do you think? What do you think Miss Jessie Leeds' intent was here when she wrote this up?
I think she was just trying to avoid like an estate sale of selling the house upon her death and then splitting up the money. I think he just wanted to keep the house
In the family.
with somebody in the family.
And then, would Evelyn be allowed to sell the house?
I feel like that was probably the intent.
That she would not be able to sell it?
Oh, that she would. Oh, sorry.
So you think Evelyn could sell it?
I think she could. I think she was just trying to stress the point that she didn't want like the house sold.
But you think that she thought Evelyn could have sold it?
Just plain interpretation. I feel like that might have been her intent.
Jordan, what do you think? I mean, with three people, if you have three people want to read it, just you're not a lawyer, you're not in law school, just plain reading here.
Plain reading it, I would think that she wanted Evelyn to remain living in the house.
Okay.
She didn't want anyone to sell it.
Ever.
Ever. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Ashley, let's put this in terms of present interest and future interest here. All right. We have some terminology. We'll just presume that Jessie had a fee simple to start. Maybe she didn't, but we'll just presume she had a fee simple. What sort of interest did? Sorry, I'm not sick, but I've had this mucus that just refuses to go away. It's just killing me. So Ashley, what interest do you think Jessie gave to Evelyn? Just as a matter of law now. Think about law school terminology. What interest do you think she gave her?
Present interest?
Okay, she gave her present interest. Ooh, what are the present interests we've studied so far?
Life estate?
Yeah, okay, or we've only studied two. Okay. Did Jessie give to Evelyn a life estate or a fee simple?
Life estate.
Does it say anything about Evelyn's life in there?
But I don't know, it's just the whole underlining and emphasis on that. If there's something
Does this resemble anything you've studied before? Is this really a life estate or a fee simple? Something else?
something else probably, but I would think it'd be leaning towards.
Can you make up your own present interests? The short answer is you can't, right? Ms. Jessie did something weird here, right? And I want to just explain in my own, how I see it. She effectively says that this house belongs to Evelyn, but it can't be sold. In other words, there's a fee simple here. But wait a minute, Josh. Fee simple means you have the entire bundle of sticks, which means the right to sell. So imagine this. Jessie gave a fee simple, but removed that stick about the right to sell. So she basically has the entire fee simple minus the right to sell. But that's not a fee simple, right? The very definition of fee simple is you got the entire bundle of sticks. So in short, Jessie just made up a third interest. She just made one up. And you can't do that, right? The courts don't allow people to make up different types of interests. There's a fixed number of interests, and that's what you're stuck with. You can't make up stuff. So then the court has a difficulty, right? How do we read this, right? How do we give effect to this? And I don't worry about the various opinions. I want to just walk through this calmly. So Ryan, what's maybe one way of reading this, right? How might we read this to fit this as a life estate, right? How could we read this that Jesse was giving Evelyn a life estate?
So it would be a life estate of white, and then the remainder to those heirs, which would be brown.
You're right, but how do you make this language fit a life estate? Just explain how that would work. Like, imagine that Jesse actually wanted to give a life estate. How would this language accomplish that goal?
House from O to A for life. And then
No, you're framing it in very smart language. Look at the language she used. How could you read this language such that Jesse was giving Evelyn a life estate? What words might you focus on to get there that she wrote in?
home to live in.
Live in. That sounds like life, doesn't it? And what happens when she's not living anymore? What happens to it?
I guess the reversion.
Very good. Reversion, that's right. I think that's one way of reading it. You say, well, house to live in. I mean, that's not, exactly life estate, but that's close enough for a non-lawyer. So you basically say, from Jessie to Evelyn for her life, and during her life she can't sell it. And then when Evelyn dies, there's reversion to my heirs, Jessie's heirs. That's one way to read it, right? Jay, what's another way of reading that conveyance to maybe resemble a fee simple? Can you read this to become a fee simple? Is there any argument you can raise?
I definitely read it as a fee simple, but the complication for me is it feels like there's a condition.
Yeah. There's a condition on selling it, right? And I like the word you use, condition. There's a phrase that you may see in law, I'll type a few here, called a restraint on alienation. That sounds like a mouthful. A restraint on alienation. To alienate means to convey or transfer, right? Alienate means to convey or transfer, right? Think of like alien. A restraint means a restriction on the ability to transfer. Courts do not like restraints and alienation. The fee tail was restraint and alienation, and the courts basically killed those. What Jesse tried to do here was create a restraint and alienation. Basically, it's a fee simple minus the power to sell. And the court in this case wasn't okay with that, right? Cassidy, what did the court in this case say about restraints and alienation?
Against public policy.
They're void against public policy. So what did the court actually do here? Let me go back to the will. The court said, okay, we have this language, and we have two choices. We can either read as a life estate or as a fee simple with a restraint. They say, we don't want to read as a life estate. Why? Under the law of our state, we presume that entire bundles of sticks were transferred, right? We don't have what's called partial intestacy. We have complete or total transfers. So they say life estate's out. We don't want to adopt a reading where only part of the estate is given. And that's a reasonable assumption, okay? But the second part is where students get a little messy. They say, well, so it's not a life estate, so it's got to be a fee simple. But we don't have fee simple in this state where you can't sell it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our blue pencil. Oh, I actually drew on this, sorry. This wasn't deliberate. Let me stay in my lane. How about this? Text. Strike through. There we go. Better. Instead of drawing on the stupid board. Okay. Strike through. There we go. The court basically took a pencil and struck out that language. All right, they took a pencil and they said, never mind, we're not going to read those provisions. And if you strike this out, it looks a lot more like a life estate in my mind. But if you strike that language out, they say, okay, Evelyn has fee simple absolute. Evelyn has a fee simple. Now you can say, wait a minute, Josh, how can you do that? How can a court cross out language in a will? And the short answer is that courts say we're following her intent. And she wasn't a lawyer, and she didn't write it the right way. Here's what we think she meant. That probably makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, doesn't it? And the dissent wasn't happy about it at all. Ashley, what did the dissent in this case?
Basically that it was clear that her intention was, like, because she made that explicit refusal to sell her house, that this should not be considered a fee simple.
Absolutely. I think the dissent gets a better argument here, right? I think Miss Jessie wasn't sophisticated, but you don't need to be to inherit, to leave your property to your family. You don't need to hire an expensive lawyer. Here it's pretty clear what she wanted, right? She wanted a fee simple that Evelyn couldn't sell. Or she wanted a life estate, right? Indeed, she knew how to leave property. Look at the next sentence. It says, I leave my personal property to Miss Sandra White. That's a fee simple interest. She knew how to give a fee simple and she wanted to, but she didn't want to do it here. She wanted this house to remain in the family. Why? We can speculate. She knew that the kids were a bunch of ingrates. They didn't want to live there. They were just going to sell the damn thing. And that's not what she wanted. And indeed, it was sold later on to Chrysler with all this stuff that happened afterward, right? She wanted this family house to stay in her family. She wanted a fee tail, right? The thing you can't do. That's what she wanted. So the dissent said, I will read this way. Give Miss Evelyn a life estate and on her death, it goes to the heirs of O. It goes to Miss Jessie Leeds' heirs. Now, just one note. The book calls that a remainder, if you notice this. It's actually reversion. The courts mix this up also, right? Miss Evelyn has a life estate, and there's reversion to the heirs of Jessie. So look, the ingrate kids get it eventually, right? They just have to wait for her to die. I know it's gruesome. Everyone's just waiting for people to die in this class. But once Evelyn dies, then the heirs get it. And there were 12 of them, is that right? There were 12. Imagine dividing property among 12 siblings. That's insane. I had a student who sat right there a couple of years. I don't always remember people's names. I remember where they sit. Actually, he was Raymond. He sat right there where Mike is. Maybe it was Ashley, one of those two seats. And he had some family land out in West Texas that was never very valuable. And at some point, they found oil. And all these cousins came out of the woodworks. And we're talking like 60, 70 cousins. And they had to figure out who owns what. And it was just a disaster because you had, going back hundreds of years with all these people dying without a will. These were West Texas. They didn't have any wills. And here's what often happens. An oil company will buy out one of the kids' shares and then try and just get the court to sell the entire lot altogether, which is what happens in the next case, right? When you have multiple heirs, usually one of the heirs can try and petition for a sale and you just divide the proceeds. So this happens not infrequently. But I think he told me like 60 or 70 cousins. It was insane. The amount of family members just sort of dig through and figure out who's who because it's very valuable now. There's oil. Okay. Yes, Deanna.
So if the court would have taken Ben's position and given the reversion to the heirs of Jessie.
Very good. Yeah.
She has.
Who's she?
Jessie has
12.
Wait. It says 2 sisters that quitclaim the interest.
Right.
And then 12 nieces and nephews.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there a priority between the sisters and the nieces and nephews? Or because they quitclaimed, they gave up everything
I think they gave up whatever interest they had.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, though. The court doesn't really explain. But in any event, you have 12 heirs. That's a lot of heirs.
So once the person quitclaims theirs.
I don't want to say that because they might get it back through by operation of law, so I don't want to quite say that. I'm not sure in this case. They might have, but I'm not sure.
So basically the heirs are just the 12.
I think in this case. I mean, it's also possible that only 12 sued. Right, the sisters maybe just didn't care to sue. Yeah.
So it seems like in both of these cases, like the courts were like sympathetic to like the old ladies living in these houses.
That's well. Look, I mean, I said this before. If you love someone, don't give them a life estate, right? In this case, you both had elderly women who lived very long, who were basically chained to land by life estates. They couldn't leave. They couldn't sell. Right. And let me put it this way, even if this clause wasn't there, would anyone buy a life estate from Miss Evelyn? No. No one's going to buy a life estate. This was our second case, right, with Weedon. When you have a life estate, you're stuck. You can't sell it. So even if you strike out this language, she's still stuck in the land, which is why I think the majority said, okay, just give her a fee simple absolute and be done with it. Chance.
If there's no benefit to life estates, why do courts even allow it?
While there's some benefit, you can live on there for your life. You just can't sell it. There's some benefit. I mean, look, I gave an example in the last class that was recent, but Hugh Hefner, right, was the Playboy Mansion guy, right? He was old and running out of money. He had one asset that was valuable, which was the Playboy Mansion. He didn't want to get rid of it, but he gave himself a life estate and gave remainder to a neighbor, and he got money out of it, right? So if you know someone's going to die soon, maybe you'll take the risk, and then you'll just take the remainder and pay for it.
When you have a life estate, you're responsible for the property taxes?
Yes. Yes. The question was, when you have a life estate, are you responsible for the taxes? Generally, the answer is yes. Yes, Chance.
Back to the other thing, say he blows through that money again that he got for his life estate, what happens? Does the property then go back to whoever he sold the remainder to? Or?
Well, the remainder only goes when you die. So unless Hefner gets it foreclosed, but someone else has the future interest.
Well, in this point, if someone forecloses,
the bank forecloses on his present interest, right? Assume it depends. If the mortgage was taken out before or after the life estate was created, but let's say you have, let me do two different ways. If you take out a mortgage and then carve out a life estate, the person you're selling it to has to know that the mortgage stays in the land, even if you convey it. Right, so let's say the mortgage was taken out 20 years ago. Hefner gives a life estate and he goes into default. The remainder man's got to pay the tab. Right? You don't get out of a mortgage by giving away a life estate. The mortgage remains. The security interest there remains. But don't worry about mortgages. You'll do that in property too. I don't want you to get ahead of yourselves. Mortgages are complicated. Questions on this case? All right, so ultimately the majority says just give Evelyn a fee simple, forget the language, cross it out. And the dissent says no, just give her a life estate and then a reversion to the heirs of Jesse. And I think the dissent's probably right here, but I can see the majority's position. Usually when your casebook includes a dissent, it's because the majority is either wrong or did something that was not necessarily perfect. Any questions on this one? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Amir, you want to give me the facts, please? The next case, Baker versus Weedon, Mississippi, 1972.
So there's 3 marriages. John Weedon first married Lula and had 2 kids. The first kid, Florence, had 3 children. Then he married again.
Yep.
And then both his second wife and the child passed away. Then he married again.
Yeah.
He was 55. He married a 70-year-old.
Yeah. Keep going.
So after that, then he bought a farm. After then John passed away, and due to and so in his will, he basically said, "I give to Anna all my property during her life, and then she dies, I give all my property to my grandchildren." So when John dies, Anna works on the farm, but because due to her old age, she begins to rent the property.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Amir. So this guy got around. he had an extended family. And he was born in 1860. So I mean, this guy had a fairly long life. His first marriage had 2 kids, and those kids had kids. His second marriage, the wife died, the child died. That one we don't really care about. They're all dead. And the third marriage was to Anna. And Anna was much younger than him. She was 17. There was no children. I think one of the subtexts of this case is maybe she couldn't have kids. That's sort of implied, but there were no kids there. She worked on the farm, and as far as we can tell, they had a good relationship. Okay, but then we get this will. Cam, you want to just read the second paragraph? I have it on the board also.
Second, I give and bequeath to my beloved wife, Anna Plexico Weedon, all of my property, both real, personal, and mixed, during her natural life, and upon her death to her children, if she has any.
Okay, stop right there. So, when I give you the examples of the board, like from O to A for life, it's very neat and clean. But this is how people actually speak. So it says, I give my property to Anna during her natural life. What do you call that, Cam?
Life estate.
Okay, life estate. Okay. Now, what's the future interest after this life estate? What do we call that?
Remainder.
Why is it a remainder? Who does it go to?
To her heirs.
Whose heirs?
It says her, if she has any.
Okay. Why is it not a reversion? What's the difference between a remainder and a reversion?
Third party.
Who the third party here?
Her kid.
Very good. So the future interest here is a remainder, right? Because it goes to a third party. But here's the catch. I think Heather asked me before the word if, right? This is what if is, right? Ricardo, what happens if Anna doesn't have any kids?
It goes to his grandchildren.
Who? Yes, right? John, exactly, right? So just walk through what happens here, right? Anna has a life estate. We can all agree on that much. The future interest is a remainder to Anna's kids, but it's not certain to happen. It's conditional, right? And if Anna has no kids, then it goes to John's grandchildren. And he has a couple of them. Everyone get that, right? So it's a life estate present interest. There's a future interest and remainder for Anna's kids, but it's conditional. Anna doesn't have any kids. The remainder goes to the grandchildren of John. Doug?
So then, after her kids.
Who's just be Anna, right?
Yes, after Anna's kids, is that technically, so like, if it's met, if she has kids, does that now become her heirs?
Say it one more time. I think I missed you in the middle.
So, if Anna does end up having kids.
Does not have kids. No.
Then it goes back to.
Just you're using doesn't. If Anna has no kids.
If Anna does have kids.
If Anna does have kids, right?
And she passes away, it goes to her kids.
The kids get the remainder. That's right.
And then that continues.
But once the kids have it, that's theirs in fee simple. In fact, to be precise, the kids have a remainder in fee simple. Right? The kids would have a remainder in fee simple, so long as kids exist. Right? We don't know if they're going to be any kids. Anna, we know, never had kids. But the kids, in theory, would have a remainder in fee simple. Nancy?
So then how is the state's sale to the grandchildren even proper, if she's still alive? I mean, she could be 60 and still.
You're asking such a good question. Well, oh no, this is biological.
Only biological children. Because it says that the one grandchild they couldn't find was adopted and presumed.
Okay, so under modern law, in the present day, adopted children and biological children treated the same. That's a recent innovation.
Okay.
When the word children was used here in this instrument at the turn of the century, that almost certainly meant biological children. But let me ask get to a question in a minute. How old can a woman be before she can't give birth anymore?
That's
Today,
fine.
60, 70, 80?
Yeah.
In property law, this is going to gross you out. We presume that anyone's capable of reproducing at any age.
Right.
There's an image, just gird yourselves. There's an image, there's a concept called the fertile octogenarian, where you presume even a woman in her 80s can reproduce. And the opposite of that, and this is the grosser part, called a precocious toddler, where a person of any age, however young, can reproduce. I know. But the reason why you have these presumptions is exactly to answer Nancy's question. The kids of Anna could have been born when she was 70, and they got screwed in this case. They got left out. And that's why the courts don't like ordering sales, because it screws the remainder in.
Well, because it seems like then the court would somehow have to have, like, deemed her, just as you said, and that's what was my next point. Now they've said you can't reproduce.
That's what they basically said. That was wrong, in fact. I think this case was wrong also.
Yeah.
Yes?
So if she were to adopt a child at 80?
I don't think that considers children from this will. Hell, she could have just adopted a kid to get out of this stupid will. Yeah. But let's just go on, right? So we understand. The kids have remainder, but it's conditional. The kids may never be born. And if not, the land goes to the third party, which is the grandchildren of John. Allison.
So the grandchildren, would you consider them heirs? Was that reversion?
I knew you were going to ask that. No, they're not his heirs, right? When they're named out, when they're spelled out like that, I would consider them as third parties, right? If it said goes to my heirs, to John's heirs, then I think it's reversion. But here, when you name them, I'm going to call that a remainder. I was waiting for someone to ask me that question. It's a very good question. You're thinking in the exact right wavelength. The second paragraph. You want to read it for me, Victor? Paragraph 3.
Third, in this will I have not provided for my daughters, Miss Florence Baker and Miss
There's delete. I don't know.
Weedon Jones. The reason is I have given them their share of my property, and they have not looked after and
That should be cared, sorry.
in the latter part of my life.
Yeah, so screw them, right? Okay, so the father, someone asked me, can you write your kids out of your will? Absolutely you can. No doubt. You can write your kids out of your will. That's easy. All right. So we have now this conflict, right? John dies in 1932, and then Anna lives forever, right? She lives for decades on decades. In fact, she outlives some of the grandkids. But she can't sell the land. Why? Her interest is life estate. No one will buy it from a life estate because once Anna dies, poof, goes to the grandkids. Anna can't take out a mortgage in the land because once Anna dies, poof, goes to the grandkids. No one will build anything on the land because any construction in the land, poof, go to the grandkids once Anna dies. So it's basically worthless. You can use it as a farm. I think she rents it out, but that's all you can do to it.
I'm getting real technical, but if Anna,
Oh, God.
put in today's term for adoption would be acceptable. But if Anna wanted to adopt a child, could she convey her life interest to the child and therefore they have to fee them?
Yes.
all the time?
That would have broken it. Yeah. But once you convey to the, let me explain what he's talking about, right? He asked a very good question. Anna, just say Anna adopts a child. The child has a remainder. Anna's life estate. If Anna sold her life estate to the child has both the present and future interest, that becomes a fee simple, the entire bundle of sticks. But the problem is when the kid can say, bye mom, nice knowing you. Because the kid has no obligation to give it back to the mom. Right? Once you convey your interest, you're living on the edge. Yeah. No. And ask me after class. I'm running a little bit short on time, but you're asking a good question, but I don't want to go too far into the hole. So here's the situation. Anna is living. And the grandkids are sympathetic to her, but not that sympathetic, right? If the grandkids are really sympathetic, Nikki, what would the grandkids do? If the grandkids really, this is more or less Blake's question, right? If the grandkids really felt bad for Auntie Anna, what would they have done? No, they had to do something. They can't just ignore her. What interest do the grandkids have? And what do we call that? What could the grandkids have done to help out Auntie Anna? Yes. Yes, and Nikki, just finish the sentence. If Anna has a life estate, the kids are the grandkids, right? The kids have remainder. If the grandkids give their remainder to Anna, what does Anna have? Exactly. If the same person holds both the present and the future interest, as Anna has both the life estate and the remainder, that just merges into a fee simple. If the grandkids were really trying to help out Auntie Anna, they would just given her the remainder. And then she'd have fee simple and she'd be living clean. But they didn't do that. They were sympathetic, but not that sympathetic, because it's like, who are you? You're not our grandma. I don't really care about you. So instead, the court was asked to order a sale. In other words, force a sale of the land. Now, Nancy asked a question a minute ago I think is very important. The court basically presumed that Anna will never have children. I think that's a reasonable assumption. And as a result, if Anna had kids after this, they got nothing. And that violates the intent of John. John wanted to secure the children of Anna. And by ordering a sale, the court shortcuts John's intent. Right? So ultimately, the court does something in the middle. Dana, what does the court actually do in the very end? They don't order a sale, the entire thing. What do they actually do in the end?
Did they tell them to sell part of it in interest and give some interest to Anna?
Basically.
Basically, a good wife enough to not.
Yeah, so screw the grandkids, but not all the way, right? They sold most of the property with the exception where the home was, right? They sold most of the property except where the home was, and Anna got the proceeds. And then when Anna dies, and she died, she's also like 98 years old, right? Eventually, when Anna died, what happens? The grandkids get the house. So they're not out totally. Now, we know Anna never had kids, but had she had kids, those kids would have had a hard time because their estate was shrunk, right? Their estate was less. It was only those 5 acres where the house was. Right, but I want everyone to just understand this issue. Had the grandkids actually wanted to help Anna, they would have just sold the remainder to her. But they refused, and that was their right to do. Anna was so eager to get herself in good shape, she forgot her children. Now, we know she wasn't going to have kids. She was 70, right? That's just not going to happen with science as it existed back then. I mean, today, I don't know, what's the oldest age of women have birth, 60, 70?
Not in India, but
I'm sorry?
I just Googled it. It's 74.
74, okay, I believe you. I mean, okay.
that was just a couple of years.
74. So, I mean, she was not even 74, so I guess she could have given birth, but I think Nancy raises a fair point. Her grandkids got screwed. And by ordering a sale, the court ignored the will of John, which is why courts don't like ordering sales. But that puts that puts Anna in a very bad spot. I'm sorry. Puts Anna in a very bad spot because she's stuck on the land. She can't get any money for it to sell it, can't get a loan on it, and she's got nowhere to go. So this, I think, is just a bad case all around. I feel like the grandkids just give it to her, let her be done with it. But they're waiting for her to die because they think they get some money out of it. Okay. Questions on this case? Questions on this case? All right. Let me summarize because I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'll make sure you're all. Excuse me. Let me just remove these strikeouts. Okay. So let's just go back to our very first part of the lesson, right? So far, we've talked about present interests and future interests. In any question that I ask you this semester, you always have to account for both. And so far, you've only studied a couple kinds, so it's easy. For your class on Thursday, you're going to get new stuff, right? There's far more than 4 of these to remember. And in fact, I'm going to give you a table next week to start listing these. I'm not giving it to you yet, but there are a lot of things in this table. But so far, we have 2 types of present interests. Excuse me. You have what's called the fee simple, which means the entire bundle of sticks. The right to sell, the right to exclude, etc. And the fee simple is represented by the phrase, and his heirs. Right? And his heirs doesn't mean the person's heirs. Literally, it represents a fee simple interest. The second type of present interest we've studied so far is the life estate. The life estate. The life estate is measured by a person's life. When that person dies, something happens, right? And that's the important point. After a life estate, we have to ask, what is the future interest? Right? After a life estate, we ask, what is the future interest? It's going to be either a remainder or reversion. Those are the two options. So far, there'll be more. But so far, after a life estate, it can be the remainder or reversion. How do you distinguish a remainder from reversion? You need to look at where it goes. You need to study what happens to it after death. If the property goes to a third party, there's a comma, it goes to a third party, you have what's called a remainder. If the property goes back to the grantor or the heirs of the grantor, you have what's called reversion. And always make sure you fill in the blank. It can be a remainder in fee simple, or it can be reversion in fee simple, but it doesn't have to be. You can have remainder in life estate. You can have reversion in life estate. You can stack these any way you want. But it's not enough to say remainder, reversion. For now, all you know is life estate, that's what you got. So it's probably going to be remainder and life estate. But you need to fill in the blanks on the exam. If you just say remainder, that's halfway there, that's nice. But if you say remainder and life estate, okay, now you got full credit. Yes?
If the, in the case that we just talked about, if the remainder goes back to the O's heirs, but they're listed out,
Then they're not heirs, right? If you name them, they're not really heirs, right? I know that sounds silly, but heirs are determined by law, right? I'm slightly simplifying, but generally when the phrase heirs means you don't specify who's getting it. Heirs determine your spouse gets half, the kid gets half, right? That's what heirs works like that, okay? When you name someone, those are generally someone that you're specifying, and that's more like a remainder. Now, Marissa's asking a good question. I'll get to that second, Ashley. We're going to have questions this semester where it's going to be really difficult to distinguish remainders from reversion, right? There are going to be some line drawing questions that are very hard. And I'll tell you, on the exam, if you're asking about, I can sometimes accept both answers if you describe it the right way, right? So there's not going to be a single answer. There are going to be some really hard ones where it's not clear. These are pretty straightforward. They get messy. But you need to understand where it's going, and that at least gets you half the way. Ashley?
Picking back off of exactly what she was saying, it would have said to Anna and her heirs, then it would have been a reversion instead of Anna and her children. So because they were said,
Well, let's go back. Let's go back to the language to make sure we're talking about the right thing. Okay. So you're looking at.
Yes.
Okay. So it's to Anna during her natural life and upon her death to her children.
Yes.
What would you change that to?
So earlier we said that was a remainder because the children were a third party.
Right.
But if it said to Anna and her heirs.
Oh, okay.
You get what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, but it's going to be something different.
Children.
What if it said to Anna for her life, then to Anna's heirs? Like that?
Yes. That's what, okay.
That'd be a fee simple.
Yeah. Okay.
It wouldn't be the natural way of writing it. But if someone actually wrote this, just the same way Ashley read it to me a minute ago, I'm sorry, not the Anna. To Anna, thank God there are no Annas here, I'm sorry. Do we have an Anna here? Okay, good. To Anna for life, then to Anna's heirs. That'd be fee simple. It's not the traditional way of writing it, but I think the court would interpret that as a fee simple.
And so
Because heirs need not be children. By naming the children, they knocked out the fee simple.
okay, and so because we just said reversion goes to the grantor or the heirs of the grantor.
That's right.
We could consider it a reversion because it
that would ultimately be the heirs.
Well, this is just a fee simple. There's no reversion.
Okay.
It's a fee simple conveyance. Yeah. And I may go 1 minute over. Just hang tight, please. Yeah.
So if the executrix for her life didn't and his heirs unless she has.
Oh, don't do unless, please.
That would be wrong.
Next week we'll do unless. You can do unless, but don't do it now. Now with 1 minute left in class. Any other questions? Yeah. Nikki, just hang tight. Don't pack up yet. Just give me another. I'll make sure everyone gets their questions asked.
So there's no policy considerations yet other than just
Be really specific, or else the course might interpret it by crossing crap out that you didn't want to write. Anything else? All right. Thank you all so much. I will see you on Tuesday. Please do the readings very carefully. Thursday. Please do the readings carefully.